Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the January 2022 Charlottesville Board of Architectural Review meeting. We're now live on channel 10, and we're continuing to stream on the city's social media channels. So for our new participants, we are currently probably being viewed by people out in the community. My name is Robert Watkins. I'm city staff, and I will be making sure that things run smoothly virtually tonight. I will hand things over to Brett Gastinger, our chair, in a little bit, but first I'll just go over a few guidelines just to make sure that anybody who might want to participate knows what's going on. So first, for anybody who might be watching from home, I will introduce the meeting participants who are online right now. First, we have Brett Gastinger, the chair of the BAR. We're also joined by Clayton Strange, Hunter Smith, Ron Bailey, and James Zemer, who are also BAR members. A few other members might join later on in the meeting. And we're also joined by Jeff Werner and Patrick Corey, who are both city staff. For members of the public who are on the call right now who'd like to provide comment, you can provide comment at the beginning of the meeting, where we allow time for comments from the public for items not on the agenda or on the consent agenda. If you wish to provide comment, you'll need to be a participant on this call, and you can do so by going to the city calendar and registering for the meeting. And when we get to the comment portion, you can raise your hand using the raise hand feature in the participant tab, and I will unmute you. And I don't think we're going to need any breaks, but if we need breaks, our chair, Brett Gastinger, can direct us for when those are necessary. I can pass things on to Brett now, but please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.
Sure. Welcome to the regular monthly meeting of the Charlottesville Board of Architectural Review. Normally, I would go into a longer introduction about how the process through which we'll listen to the projects that are on the agenda. For those of the public that are tuning in, this is a bit of a unique meeting in that we do not have any formal items up for review by the BAR today. But nonetheless, this still is an official meeting, and we do have some things that we need to discuss. I actually am looking forward to this meeting because sometimes we're so focused on the projects, we don't always have the opportunities to introduce ourselves to the public. We have 3 new members that are joining the BAR this month. And so we want to take a little bit of time to introduce the entire BAR that is able to attend today for both to the public and to each other. We'll also make some space in this meeting for some discussion of some of the upcoming issues, kind of review of how our guidelines work, and have some space for the team to talk together about our process and how best to and most efficiently and most communicatively proceed with our work this year and beyond. So with that introduction, I will proceed with our agenda and move into matters from the public for any items that are not on the agenda or on the consent agenda. And today the consent agenda is only approval of past meeting minutes. So are there any matters from the public?
If you wish to provide any comment, raise your hand in the participant tab, or if you're calling in, press *9. Mr. Chair, I don't see any raised hands.
Okay. Then we'll move on to the consent agenda. I'm not sure if we're going to have, we'll see if we have a quorum. I wouldn't expect the new members to approve the meeting minutes from last year. We have enough?
Oh, yeah, James asked the same question, but I didn't factor in that 2 of the members weren't here for the last meeting.
Oh, there we
go. Oh, we've got 4 now. Is that enough? No.
We can potentially table the approval of the minutes to later and see if we get a quorum.
Yep, that sounds good.
Yeah. Okay. Would you like to make a motion then, James?
Sure. I move that we table the consent agenda until we have a quorum.
Second.
I think you can just vote by raising your hand.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Jeff, did you want to go ahead and talk about the preservation awards, and maybe we can save introductions for when all the members are here?
Yeah, I sent, and I know Breck and Jody and James probably, a lot of this is helpful for you because of your knowledge at the university, but I sent that, I just sent the PDF out in that email. And let me find it and open it myself. So when we typically, when we've done these awards, so what it'll be is it's an 8.5 by 11 piece of hardboard that we or what do we call it?
Cardstock.
Yeah, cardstock. You're right. So and I wanted to so ignore the shape and the size because I just stuck it into a cut and paste and stuck it in there. So this was there was the award for the memorial to the enslaved laborers at the University of Virginia. And so typically we will recognize an owner, the designer. I don't know who the contractor was. So, and actually Robert and I were talking about it. I was intrigued that this project had been initiated by the students at the university. So it is almost in my first part idea as well to the students, University of Virginia students, alumni, but we decided to just keep it simple. And then those are the 4 individuals that have been identified as having been involved in the design work. And I just want to know what you all thought. Breck or James, Jordy.
So
Jody, you knew anybody?
the contractor their name is Team Henry, and I can see if there's a more official name, but go ahead, Jody.
James, what do you think about just asking Jeff to get in touch with Sarita and work out the politics of who should be recognized and get the proper name of the contractor?
Yeah, we can do that. I had reached out to her to get the actual name of this award accurate. So I think she'd be willing to definitely help us out with that.
Yeah,
That would be really helpful.
There's politics involved here. So,
I'm sure.
and a bunch of people. So
Yeah, it's done in the.
There's definitely also like a community outreach arm of this. And I don't know if that group has a name. If it does, that might also be a good group to include.
Yeah, because
Or
what we've
we
done, I'm sorry,
just
what we've
award
done
it
is,
to the project.
yeah, we've printed one, Carl had to sign a whole bunch last year and printed one for each individual. It is, I don't know if less is more, maybe. I don't want to send out, 50 of these, but
contact James, could you have Sarita give Jeff a call?
yeah, let's
or email.
Yeah, whatever you guys think is right, it's fine.
Yeah. Generally, I think that we're probably not in good position to answer these questions. I think that this probably should go generally to the applicant or the owner and ask who they feel should be recognized. But we don't know enough about. This one has specific politics, but all projects have will have some politics associated with who should be recognized for that work.
All right, so James, James, give me some suggestions on that.
Sarita Herman was the project manager from our team, and so she'll know exactly who the right folks are to list and send this to.
All right, I got a note here. So the next one's I scrolled mine. Robert, next one's that's just it.
Sorry.
Be Rugby Road. Yeah, I don't know. Robert and I were trying to think of the word. You said outstanding individual achievement, and it's sort of a for what? And I thought it'd be nice to at least say, was it the brick wall? Was it the landscaping?
I think it was dealing with the city of Charlottesville.
I know. Yeah, that'll be a private award I give Sandy Wilcox later. But yes. So I don't know. I just wanted to,
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay.
Or what about improvement?
Streetscape improvement.
That's another idea.
Okay, That
Kept wall from falling over. Okay, all right, you got, street rate improvement. All right,
yep.
okay. Next one is, I just took the text from what Sherry had said. Does that seem fine? Contributions to,
I think that's great.
okay. I actually saw in the old files, they used to give out almost looks like a big trophy with a plaque on it for that. So Mary Jo would be okay with just this. The next one, this is that project over by Dairy Central. It's no longer Trinity Episcopal, but we've referred to the historic name of something. Is saying former appropriate?
I think so.
Okay.
Well, anybody else?
Wouldn't you want to say something like former Trinity Episcopal Church building or something like that to specify? Because
I
it's
thought
not,
about saying that the sanctuary, but didn't they do something to the parsonage and an outbuilding?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with that one.
I could say buildings plural. Former Trinity Episcopal Church buildings.
That works.
Okay.
But I
That's
don't know if all of those buildings were the former Trinity Church. Is it just a sanctuary and then they built the others, or I don't know the history.
Yeah, it's a sanctuary and then the parsonage next to it. So they were a kind of a package.
Both of them were moved?
Yeah. Well, I don't know about the house. The church used to be at the bottom of the hill across from the county office building. So
Right.
on the other side of McIntyre.
Okay.
I got that one. That's good. You didn't, there's nothing wrong with using former. The rest of these are fine. So I just had them in there in case anybody, said I spelled Jefferson wrong or something like that. All right, we're good on those. Thank you for your help.
And the one you showed for Mary Joy looked like the text could be centered better.
Yeah, that I had to tinker with some
Okay,
hidden things in there. I'll fix.
thank
And
you.
here's a note from David. David Timmerman needs the link to the meeting.
I'll send that to him, Jeff.
Oh,
And
there
so-
it is.
Yeah, and I got an email from Kevin Schaefer a few minutes ago about another project, an entrance corridor project, and he said, "I heard you had COVID." I was like, "Oh, no, I did. My daughter did, but I didn't." So I don't know what's out there. I hope he's listed as Brett Gastinger, but that's Dave
Yep.
Timmerman, and I hope he doesn't
Because
have.
he stole my link. Welcome, David. You'll have to rename yourself to go to the upper right-hand corner of your picture. You can choose a name more befitting.
I've always wanted to be you, Breck, so maybe I'll just leave it, let it ride.
Thank
Hey,
you.
stand in line. We all want to be Breck.
That's right. That's right. You get the boys for a week.
Yeah.
I was James briefly when I first joined the meeting.
Right.
So, Breck, I'll hand it to you, but this is where it's really, as Breck said, I think it, Hunter, I think I met you at some of True Craft's beer festivals. And Clayton, we haven't met you. David, I know you, but I know, we're going on 2 years now since we sat in a room with each other, and to the three of you that are new to the BAR, we typically started with sometime around 5, hopefully sometime a little earlier. We'd feed you at the county office, the city hall, and then go through some things before the meeting, so we weren't washing laundry on television, and then we'd walk up the hall, go to the meeting, and typically afterwards we would get together and get to know one another. So it's been difficult, working with little heads in our little Brady Bunch squares, but I think at least for the next couple of months, this is probably where we'll be. I know the city is looking to get staff back into the office starting in March, and I'm sure there will be some slow transition to in-person meetings of certain groups, particularly city council, planning commission, Board of Zoning Appeals and you all as BAR. So I'll keep you apprised of that. But I think it just would be helpful to each of us, and staff included, tell each other a little bit about ourselves. You know, not a read your resume, but just to, you know, something that so that we can all start to know who each other is and something to build on a little bit. So
And I just add to that too. You know, the BAR sometimes can feel probably a bit opaque and strange to the public, and not always know where we're coming from or who we are. But we are all volunteers. We all live in this community, and we've all been selected and appointed by City Council as a particular role, to take a particular role on this board. So as we're going around, it would be great to also just note what position you're sitting in as we introduce ourselves. I guess I'll go first to break the ice. I'm Brack Gastinger. I'm a landscape architect, but I also have a background in architecture, degrees from UVA, spent a lot of time in Campbell Hall, and have lived in North Downtown for the past 18 years. I feel that I was very lucky to work on landscape projects in a broad range of scales and locations, but I was really excited about the chance to serve on the BAR as a way to be better engaged in the design issues that are confronting our city. And we have such a fascinating mixture of stories that are latent in our built environment that are worth celebrating, preserving, and at the same time, we're also, you know, a rapidly changing community, developing, building, and so I really like the chance that we have to help shape that environment in a way that's cohesive and in the ways that it promotes a better understanding of our historic environment. So I'm glad to be here. This is my first official meeting as chair, so I'll be learning a little bit along with you. Carl did a great job the past several years, and so he has big shoes to fill. I'll just call on you guys as we go the way they appear to me. Robert, would you say a little bit about yourself? You're not officially BAR.
Yeah.
But,
No, I'm happy to introduce myself as well. So I'm not on the BAR. My name is Robert Watkins. I am city staff. Jeff is the lead preservation planner for the city, and I'm the assistant preservation planner. I've been working for the city for 2.5 years. I started about 6 months before COVID. I grew up in Southside Virginia, about an hour and a half south of here in Charlotte County. So I spent a lot of time coming to Charlottesville growing up. And David, actually, I went to William and Mary and I took some classes in Tucker Hall, which I saw in your resume that you worked on the renovation a few years ago. So I was excited to hear that you'd work on that because it's a really interesting building. But I grew up loving old buildings. I lived in San Francisco for a year before moving here to Charlottesville. And I've really settled in nicely, even though most of my time has been during COVID. So it's been great to work with Jeff. It's been great to work with BAR, and I'm excited to get to know the new members.
Sorry, I just got a link from Robert Edwards. Didn't get a link either tonight, but I've just emailed it to him, so hopefully he'll join momentarily.
Okay.
Since he's let's go to Ron.
Hi, I'm Ron Bailey. My wife, Pamela Friedman, and I have been residents of downtown Charlottesville for over 22 years now. And I'm the representative for the normal people. I'm merely a resident. I am not a person with a degree in architecture of any sort or the other, though my wife and I both greatly appreciate the architectural richness of the city of Charlottesville. I'm a journalist, and I've been working at home downtown in Charlottesville for 22 years as well. And I have found this a fascinating experience, and I'm very sad that we've not been able, in fact, to meet in person and go out afterwards to discuss the architectural issues of the day, as it were. As I often say at our home, when we had dinner parties prior to COVID, we had a joke is, you know, you're never supposed to talk about politics, religion, or money, because of people get into fights. We discovered that at our table, when we talked about architecture, that's where people really got into fights. So I very much enjoyed this experience. I've learned a great deal. And I hope again that I fully represent the normal people of Charlottesville.
Excellent, thanks. Hunter, you want to go?
Sure, I'm happy to. I'm Hunter Smith, in some circles known for founding Champion Brewing Company here in town. My wife and kids and I have lived downtown since 2009, so in our 12th, I guess 13th year here. Currently live in North Downtown. I was born in the old Martha Jefferson, so despite moving far away to go to college in Boston, I ended up a literal stone's throw from where I was born. My parents grew up in Albemarle too, so it's a bit of a family affair here. Had a brief stint with the planning commission a few years ago, and I'm otherwise own a handful of restaurants here in town. So I think, as I discussed, the potential for joining the BAR with Carl, in some ways representing the restaurant and small business community here in town. So otherwise eager to engage with a lot of folks smarter than me and learn and hopefully serve a purpose along the way.
Thanks. Clayton, you want to go?
Sure. I'm Clayton Strange. I'm probably the newest to the community of anybody on this board. I moved here at the beginning of last fall when I was hired as an assistant professor at the architecture school. Before that, I lived in Boston and I worked for Moshe Safdie. And before that, I taught at Harvard and I worked in South Korea. So I'm from a little bit of everywhere, but really a Northeasterner. But I'm happy to join the community. And I was interested in the board because I want to get more involved in the community and I want to talk to normal people who are not necessarily architects or professors about design and architecture and its impact on the community. So I'm very happy to be here. I live in Belmont.
Excellent. Well, yeah, it's kind of amazing. The problems, the issues that are brought up, they can range from little tiny details and from preserving a window or a roof detail to really major new built environment that will really change the structure of our public space in the city. So it's kind of great that we test our test our ethics and our guidelines on those various scales. I think you'll have fun. All right, James.
Hey, everybody. I'm James Zemer. I've lived in Charlottesville officially since 2017, 18, and live in Fry Springs. But I've worked at UVA for about 13 years. Jody was my supervisor until he retired and was a great mentor. And my father was also a historic preservationist. I'm a historic preservation project manager at UVA. So I was kind of raised in the preservation fields, grew up in Richmond. My family hails from Dinwiddie County, Virginia, where we restored a historic home when I was in high school. I got an architectural history degree from UVA. I think officially on the BAR, I'm listed as one of the architectural historians. And after getting my degree, I worked for a restoration contractor for about 5-6 years. And so have some hands-on experience there, and then translated that over into project management, which has been great. And I think part of the reason I joined BAR was really to kind of expand my boundaries and my knowledge of Charlottesville and architecture beyond the grounds at the university, so I can interact with some folks all over town, which has been very enjoyable, and looking forward to working with the new members. So welcome.
All right, Jody, you want to go?
Sure, I'll represent the abnormal people. I am the representative of the planning commission, from the planning commission to the BAR. So I am serving my last year of the 8 years that I'm allowed to serve. I'll be rotating off or ending my service next August. I'm a preservation architect. I have my architecture degree from Virginia Tech, and I have an architectural history master's from the University of Virginia. And I am now retired. I retired in May after 16 years as the historic preservation architect for the university. And then 18 years before that, I had my own practice as a preservation architect in Richmond. I have just rotated off being the chair of the State Review Board for the Virginia Department of Historic Resources. So I am, and now in retirement, I am dedicated to provide my services pro bono to small nonprofits that have historic African-American buildings. And I find myself I'm right now doing a couple of churches, African-American churches here in Charlottesville, and about 6 Rosenwald schools and early 1920s African-American schools in the Central Virginia area. And I'm looking forward to doing that full time once I finish with my service with the city. But I will enjoy our time together until then.
Thanks, Jody. I don't know what retirement is going to really mean for you. From my point of view, it looks pretty similar.
It does. Busier than ever.
Excellent. Well, Robert, thanks for joining us. Sorry for the mix-up with the links. I know that there's there are 3 new people that have joined us this
I see.
month. And I don't know if you caught the introductions for those folks or not, but we were just going around. This has been, since we don't have a formal agenda or a formal projects on the agenda, so we're taking the chance to introduce ourselves both to the public and to each other, the new board. So if you don't mind taking a few minutes to introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. I'm Robert Edwards, from New York City originally, moved to Charlottesville to pursue a master's in architectural history. And ever since I graduated, worked at Monticello for a little bit in the restoration department, and then started working for the National Park Service and the National Trust for Historic Preservation. And a little over a year now, I've been working for Nelson Bird Waltz, landscape architects, as an architectural and cultural historian. That's where I met Brett, and that's how I joined the BAR. But yeah, as Breck said, the weeks vary. We can talk about dormers one week, or we can talk about Confederate monuments the next. You know, it's a very cool and very interesting task at hand to serve the community.
Excellent. And then David Timmerman.
Hey, everybody, can you hear me? I'm thrilled to be on the board, especially after hearing all these really wonderful introductions. Seems like a pretty amazing crew. And my first stint in Charlottesville was way back in 2005, right, Breck? I've been an architect for about 20 years. We moved here in that time. My wife went to school for getting our master's in landscape. And that was at that time, Breck and I worked together. Then we moved away, and as has been my kind of pattern in life, I've been a wanderer. It took me a while to actually get into the field of architecture. Before that, I was doing a number of different things, not least of which some instrument making and some exploring here and there. But we were away for about 6 years, I guess it was. Lived in Seattle. And then when my wife found out she was expecting, we were very excited to come back and be closer to families. I'm originally from Northern Kentucky, and my wife is from Maine. So I went to college up in Maine, which is where we met. And but we were thrilled to come back and kind of start our life anew here, which we did. It's been very interesting, having a very different experience. Then I've been working with BRW Architects ever since, I guess for about 7 years now, and working on a variety of projects, residential. Lately, though, a lot of commercial stuff over the last 3 or 4 years. Very interested, though, in contextual design, very interested in historic preservation, as well as new design. So I don't see myself as a specialist or anything like that. And that's why something like this appeals to me so much, because, getting into the details one day and getting into, monument discussion the next really appeals to me. So excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to getting to know everybody better as time goes on.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, the last member of our board is she's on vacation, well-deserved vacation. Sherry Lewis will have to introduce herself next month. She's now our vice chair. And Jeff, you didn't get a chance, so I think you ought to bring it on home and say a little bit about your background.
All right, so thanks. It's funny what Hunter said about Martha Jefferson. When I, tell people where my son was born, and they say, like, you mean that office building? So you can tell, the old timers from the locals, even though I'm not a local. But I'm originally from Baltimore, and my wife and I and our 2 kids have moved. Well, we lived here for 26 years. My son, born and raised here, and my daughter was 3. Both of them are grown and gone. So I watch Rex 2 grow up faster than he doesn't realize how quick they're going to be gone. And my heart breaks, but it's originally I went to West Virginia University, got a degree in forestry and engineering, went into construction for about 10 years in Northern Virginia. Somehow got a strange idea that I could go to grad school, and I got in here at university. 98, I graduated with the planning and historic preservation. And then I went and worked for about 18 years with a local regional nonprofit, and became somewhat infamous for my ability to create change. And 4 years ago, Mary Joy Scala, who everyone knows, retired from this position, and opened the door, encouraged me to apply, and here I am. And it's been an interesting journey. After grad school, I worked in facilities management for a year, and I swore if I ever worked for government again, I would do harm to myself. But yet here I am, giving it a shot. And I live in North Downtown. I talked my wife into buying this beat up old house that built in the early 1880s. It is an individually protected property. So when people say, well, you don't understand, I say, I do, in fact, because I've had to go to the VAR a couple times. The Robert Watkins and I, we have, I used to say 3 legs stool to what we do, but it's actually 4. And a lot of people don't realize the extent to what we're involved in things at the city. first and foremost is we're staff for the Board of Architectural Review. That's what goes through to you all, reviewing it, preparing it, working with applicants, et cetera, et cetera. And then I'm also staff for what the city calls the Entrance Corridor Review Board. So that's sort of the BAR for the Emmett Street, 29 Ridge Street, sort of the commercial strip area. So it's a little bit, I have a lot more latitude with administrative reviews, but still there's a design element there, and I have to review that. And then, of course, everything that you all review, they review, then it goes through site plan, building permits. So there's a whole sequence of things that Robert and I have to stay on top of to keep things going. The third leg of the stool is he and I are staff for the city's Historic Resources Committee. Primarily responsible for helping to interpret and present some of the city's history. And we've been, it's been an interesting situation with trying to address a lot of what's going on. And then the fourth leg, maybe not a complete leg, but we are, Robert and I are in charge of the historic survey. So when there's we work with DHR to get, for instance, a few years ago, did 10th and Page neighborhood, and then working to get things onto the National Register. We'll be working with a small area over north of 10th and Page that near 12th and Rosser that wants to become a historic conservation district. So it's working, kind of on the ground with those, getting things designated and protected. And the and on the side, I play lacrosse and I coach at Charlottesville High School, and I've been coaching for 30 some years. So I think if I had a passion, that would be it, despite my age. And I just will say that to all of you, I sat down with the new, you all met James Fries, I think in December, and he and I sat down and talked again on Friday, and just really positive attitude going forward. And we've just announced, I think the city announced a new interim city manager. So at least what I sense is beginning to assemble the team that really kind of gets some stability to the city. And I think a lot of people are wondering what's going on, what's happening. But the positive thing is you have a role to play in that. And we'll get into that a little bit when I talk about the design guidelines and some of the zoning revisions. So you all do play a role, and it's something it involves some homework and it involves putting in some time. But you're one of four kind of rather critical bodies to the city of Charlottesville as far as the groups that are like when we're talking about going to in-person meetings, you are one of the four, and I know I already said that. So so that's all. That's me.
So Jeff, yeah, I think that's a good, a good point, I guess, in moment to maybe take a step back. I know we've got a kind of a number of things to talk about, but I wonder if to kind of keep a trajectory of, we've got introductions now. Could you say just a little bit about the legal framework that makes us exist, and kind of what our purview is, just both as a reminder to the public but also to the new members, a refresher for us.
So, and that's one of the first thing I'd say is, and it's the biggest misconception about what the Board of Architectural Review does. We review alterations, new construction, demolitions within the city designated historic districts or the city designated historic properties. There are, for example, Belmont is on the National Register, North Belmont neighborhood. It's on the National Register of Historic Places, but that does not bring the BAR into play. We are only, the BAR has purview over those locally designated properties. For example, my house, I am not on the Virginia Landmarks Register. It is not on the National Register. However, it is locally designated, and therefore you all have purview. So it's key to remember that when someone says, well, it's on the National Register, it's like, that's great, but our charge comes from that local designation. We are, You are not
Hey,
a,
Jeff,
Yes.
Clayton has a question, I believe, relative to that.
okay, go ahead.
Is there a jurisdictional overlap between those designations?
Yes and no. I mean, there's some where it's, looks like a kid scribbled the line. Some places they overlay perfectly. It's tough to tease out the minutia sometimes with folks because I don't want to sound like the state or national designation is meaningless. I mean, it does have meaning. But as far as what you all have purview over, and so there are, yes, individually listed sites. There are listed districts. In Belmont, for example, the National Register District, there are properties in there, I think 3 or 4 that are individually, what the city calls individually protected properties. So it's they're not IPPs because of the National Register District. The National Register District just happens to coincide with it. But our boundaries are whatever it's in the first chapter of the design guidelines.
There is
That makes sense.
there are some conditions when there is a historic preservation or restoration project, I believe. And if they are going to achieve, if they're going to get tax credits, then those standards are more stringent than ours. And sometimes they don't have to go through this process. Is that correct?
Correct. So there's an administrative review. If someone's working with the Department of Historic Resources on a project, has rehabilitation tax credits, I can review that administratively. The challenge is often that DHR is reviewing one scope of work, but there's other things that are to be done. So this is where, I have to split hairs sometimes, but I tell you, it's a lot easier to express example by example. So it might be going to be a little bit like dipping candles in how that's dealt with. One of the things that's come up is, all right, well, when the city's building a new bridge, why was the BAR involved? But yet when the city puts in a new sidewalk, why was the BAR not involved? So those are some of the things we're still working out. And then we have the ADC districts, architectural design control districts, West Main, downtown, North Downtown. We have, even within those districts, there are IPPs, but we treat the IPPs and the ADC district properties the same. So it's the same review. Then the city has what are called historic conservation districts, Woolen Mills, Rugby Road, Martha Jefferson neighborhood. That's a historic preservation light, if you will. I have a lower level of review. Really, what can you see from the road type of thing? Whereas with the other districts, it's 360 degrees. So but they still come to you at the BAR. And I will say there is discussion of having the BAR review entrance corridor projects. So we'll have to see about that. So does that help? Broad brush, but.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I think, some things that are sometimes mistaken is that we do not review anything involved in the interior of the structure. We also it will sometimes gets discussed, but we're not really supposed to talk about either the cost of the project or the intended use of the project. Some of the project issues that come up are really planning issues. We do need to continue to refer to our guidelines as what grounds us and gives us jurisdiction over particular decisions. This inevitably come up. It's fuzzy sometimes.
It is, and it's even when you burrowed into something, and it might be only a one sentence in the guidelines. Another project will come in and presents a different lens to look at it through. But one thing to be clear is that all actions by you at the BAR are appealable to City Council. So you are not the end game if someone chooses to question a decision. So when I've heard people say, "Well, the BAR won't let this happen," it's like, well, that's not possible. Because if it's something you disagreed with, then that can be appealed to city council, just like we have coming with that project on Preston Place. So you all are not a legislative body. You don't make laws. You interpret guidelines and policies and make decisions. But someone can always challenge that decision up the ladder. And I think it's important to understand that. And so also Hunter, and this is where, you're from the business perspective, it's going to be tremendously helpful. And David, I know, has dealt with things as an applicant to the BAR. I think Bruce is getting everyone at BRW cycling through to the BAR to get experience. And Clayton, with your design perspectives and experience, one of the things have changed in the last 4 years. We used to take large projects, and we're getting large projects a little more frequently than we used to. And we used to approve them in incremental steps. That was just the way it was done. That's how I continued doing it. We now can only grant something approval once. We can't say, yeah, the color's great, check, come back next week with the landscape. It's created for these large scale projects where the design process is iterative. It's the applicants understand it, but it's created some uncertainty that we've been ironing out as we go with Bushman Dreyfus as our petri dish, I think, on all the projects that were looked at. But there's some process sometimes where I don't want to say we're making it up as we go, but we have some hard and fast rules from the city attorney, and sometimes I can't answer a question. But so that's one of the things that will be difficult to kind of, for you all coming in new. Normally the stuff comes in, I get it 3 Tuesdays ahead of the meeting. Robert and I try to turn it around, get the staff reports and everything out to you guys as quickly as we can. It's critical then that you all look at those things and are familiar with them. It's difficult when I've kind of gone through this and we had the applicant in front of us and the VAR is going, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? We'd like to, as much as possible, get those questions out of the way so that we're prepared for them at the meeting and not shrugging our shoulders. Because our goal is to really help the applicant get to where they have an approvable project. And we have to apply the guidelines. They're not perfect, but it's as Breck said, we don't, people have come in and said, we don't want you to build that there. And that's not your choice to decide is what is proposed to be built there consistent with the guidelines or not whether or not, as we've said, someone can build a big empty room, and all we look at is the outside, or that big empty room can be, a big block of concrete. And as long as the outside meets the guidelines, then that's what you have to look at. So, sorry, a little long-winded, but it's.
No, that's great. Have you guys have the new members received links to our guidelines? And the other thing I would mention about getting familiar with the guidelines is to also take a look at the Secretary of Interior standards. Our guidelines refer to them in several places. They can be helpful in that they might give a little bit more detail where our guidelines do not. Yeah. They cover more situations. And I would just encourage everyone, as we are reviewing projects in the coming year, to try, as you're thinking of questions and reviewing the work ahead of time, to refer to guidelines for pieces or aspects of the project that either meet or do not meet those guidelines. They're helpful to refer to.
I sent something to Hunter and Clayton and David and the links to I said we can print it if we want. When we have our meetings, we actually have binders with the guidelines in it that I put at everybody's place, just so you have something there in front of you. And I also had mentioned it we should distribute hard copies. I had a terrible time getting used to reading drawings on my computer screen. My son, who's in finance, gave me this giant screen that they use, and it's been wonderful. So, but if at any point in time you want to see something physically, tell me. If you want to see a sample of something, we can ask an applicant to make that available. So, and I said we'll start to transition that. But if I know Carl just took him a while to get used to not having hard copies, and I can still get them from you if you want. I'll also say the best way to reach me is email. As a government employee, I can tell you when that phone rings, it's like, all right, now I'm stuck for 2 hours. So we really try to encourage people to email if you really need to reach us. And I think it's a small enough town. We probably, I don't know, Brett comes over and throws rocks at my windows, make me come out. So I have a note here about the schedule for 2022. I put that out there. I could circulate that again. Robert and I had a bit of our brains seized up for February. I don't know what happened, but we are meeting on that third Tuesday of February. So I just want to make sure I cleared that up. That's the next meeting will be on Tuesday, February 15th. We have several items coming in already. Should be interesting. And then the only other meeting I think that we don't meet on a regular third Tuesday is in June. There's some holiday that bumps us. But whenever you see one of those Monday holidays that bumps city council, that's what bumps. It happens once or twice a year. And then Breck, you said something about the authorization or sort of what we are. The city of Charlottesville is what the Department of Historic Resources has determined that we are a certified local government. We meet certain provisions that were established by the National Park Service relative to, we have a Board of Architectural Review, we have a historic preservation plan and ordinance, and we have professional staff. So that certified local government status makes it that we can get grants. And I know at least, certainly in the last 4 years, I think we've got like $80,000-$90,000 in grant funding towards about $150,000 worth of work. So we were 150 plus about 80 or 90. So we've almost 8-to-1 funded things like historic surveys with grant funds, and that's available because we maintain that status as certified local government, CLG. One of the requirements of being a CLG is that every year, right about now, I have to complete this report for the Department of Historic Resources. And one of the categories is that I have to note each of you did at least 1 hour of some training relevant to being on the Board of Architectural Review. And it really is, the sky's the limit. Sherry uses some of her legal training. So I heard from everybody but a couple of you. And this goes from, it's a weird year. They go by like the September to October. So and I just checked the dates, but if you didn't respond to that, if you did something, went to something, watched something interesting on YouTube, send it to me so that I'm not saying that our CLG status is at risk. No one has said that, but I do want to take that seriously. That is part of my responsibility to make sure that you all are, staying current. And part of that too would be that we could have special meetings where we do training sessions, like arrange to have some come in and talk to us about window repair, things like that. So going forward, but just go back and check my email. You guys that are recently on, that's something I'll ask you about a year from now. And then, yeah, that's all. Those were my notes, other than getting into the other discussions later. So any questions for me?
Great. Well, I wondered if maybe as a follow-up to some of that, if any of the current or the previous, I guess, older members on the board have any thoughts or comments about our process or ideas about ways we could be more efficient or better communicators. And for the newer members, if you have questions about how the meetings will run or about your role or responsibility.
No questions.
It's all clear. That's great. Well,
I do have a question though. Moving forward, are we going to meet at 5 o'clock to go over some pre-meeting stuff?
Yeah, we
kinda
just didn't
alleviate-
have anything on the agenda.
Okay.
And Robert, he ran out of town. I had to send people to find him. He was hiding in California on a beach. And he texted me and said, "Hey, did you post the agenda yet?" Oops. So that's why I said we'll start at 5:30. But yeah, traditionally, typically, unless something unusual like tonight's meeting occurs, I want to try and meet at 5. You will find when we get into these lengthy meetings, it does help to get some of these questions out of the way.
And Robert, I was going to say that when we meet in person again, which hopefully might be in a few months, we'll have food for that. So there will be a more clear purpose. For
Finally.
yeah,
Yeah.
the city owes
guys
us
haven't fed
probably
me yet.
about 37 meals. So
That's right. Jody's going to have just pizzas. It's just going to be,
yeah.
and take care of it.
I will say I did talk to Sherry a little bit about those questions, and one of the suggestions she had, and I agree with, is that Jeff, I'd like to work with you and Robert about the agenda for that pre-meeting, and maybe run that agenda just so that we feel like it's efficient and makes space for any questions on the projects that to be discussed that night, and then any of the other things that we want to get to. We want to make sure that feels like we're getting good work done then. Related to the way that the board is functioning during the review of normal projects, I will say that one observation that I've had over the past couple of years is that one of the things that can make our meetings run long sometimes are the ongoing conversations that are either back and forth amongst ourselves or with the applicant themselves. And I think we can try, if we are prepared and reading in the materials ahead of time, and come with our questions and thoughts, that we could probably reduce some of that back and forth that is less efficient, and maybe get to some motions that are clearer and with good language, so that we're not trying to solve it all live in the meeting.
I think, Jody, the process they used at the state board was really good. And, and I don't know, Brackett, obviously to you and Sherry can sort of to your, how you viewed it, but it was the sort of going around next instead of a free for all. I always like that, but my observation.
Yeah. Any other questions? You guys are good? Garen running next month.
So if I wanted to just, and thank you for that, just wanted to touch base on what's coming up with the design guidelines and what's coming up with the code revisions and the opportunities that we have. So if you're ready for me to kind of touch on that. All right. So the design guidelines and what I sent out to you all, and also again that distinction between the design guidelines for the ADC districts and the IPPs, and then the guidelines for the historic conservation districts. They are separate, and in fact, for each of the conservation districts, there's a short list of criteria specific to that district. So The guidelines were last reviewed in and updated in 2012. As you all know, because you live here, the city's been working on a comprehensive plan revision. So we sort of were, among other things, wondering what would come out of that and any instruction that it gave us. But I have, we had tried to kind of do it in-house, BAR meeting regularly and sort of working through some changes. But that just kind of stalled. And I think we also recognize that the city council will ask about public participation. So with that in mind, last year, I asked for funds to be allocated so that we could hire a consultant who could come in and help not only with the ADC district, but each of those individual conservation districts, and help us with it, any public outreach. But what I wanted to do, and I know we've talked about this a lot, but there are a lot of things in there that we could fix. There's a lot of ideas, and so if everything continues the way the budget is, I will have funding as of July 1 to use for to put out an RFP to get a consultant to look at our design guidelines. So between now and then, I want to be working towards a scope of work that we would put out for a consultant. And so put on your thinking caps if there's some, you guys are in the design world as well. What and then I'm also going to be working towards that, and just you all going to be my star chamber and getting your input on what is in there. So that's kind of a heavy lift going into 2022, 23. So the second piece of this is the city is revising its code, its ordinance, as a function of the comprehensive plan change. We have two sections of the code that apply to us: Division 2, which is the Historic Preservation ADC district, and then Division 5, which addresses the historic conservation districts. They've asked staff to submit to a consultant's already on board and they're already working on this, what recommendations, requests, suggestions we have for modifying the ordinance. So again, I'm working on that myself, but I ask each of you just to go through that thing and been dealing with it for a while. Is there anything in there that seems ridiculous or seems wrong, or the points don't make sense? For example, we refer to structures, we refer to buildings, we refer to properties, we refer to resources, and then they sort of get thrown around like, well, what is it we're talking about? Exactly what we dealt with the statutes. Are they a structure? Well, it turned out they weren't, and anything based on our code. So, things that, if there's anything in there, I'd love your feedback. I'd love your thoughts on that. I think we need to do some things differently. I think it'd be great to get a contractor on the BAR. And I think that there are some administrative reviews that we could be doing a lot more of. And so just want you to give that some thought and know that this one's coming quickly. And so it's sort of, we have the opportunity to participate. So that's the invitation. You're not required to, but it would certainly be helpful because I think we need to strengthen how we do things and be more clear about how we do it and what we do, so that the design review doesn't get set aside in this community. That's one of my concerns. So any questions about either of those two things or anything I could help that would express it better?
Jeff, when you talk about the zoning changes that will come out of the comprehensive plan, are you speaking about recommendations we might have on specific parts of the city, sort of either physically or the way the impacts of the plan, or are you speaking about our improvements we can make to our process, for instance, like how we deal with some of these very large projects that have an iterative review process that's not very clearly addressed in the code?
That's a great question. And I think that the answer is yes to both. How historic preservation and design are addressed in areas in which the BAR has purview, and in areas that it doesn't, because one of the things we've been discussing a lot is lighting and trying to get something comprehensive throughout the city, not just the lights that are within an ADC district, and particularly the LED lighting. Clayton, it's been quite a learning curve for all of us, the difference between incandescent bulbs and LEDs. So yeah, it would be in all places. How does that overlying zoning, conflict with or work with the objectives, the design objectives of the city? So, but primarily it would be then how the decision-making process of the BAR, which is in Division 2 and Division 5.
I have a suggestion, Jeff, for
Yes.
I suspect many of the board members don't work with the ordinance a lot. And so it would be helpful, I think, if you sent around links to those two divisions to make it easier for people to look them over.
It's yeah, and if you're good at editing and proofreading, there's a lot of missing commas and things like that. There would be, you don't need to be an attorney. I'm sorry, Clayton, you were.
No, I was just agreeing. I think that's a good idea. That's all.
You were going to tell us that you're an expert on LED lighting, and I don't know, Hunter, I mean, your observations around town, because one of the things we like, I don't know, most of you know, but some may not have noticed. What was it? The Standard on West Main that just had those look like vertical sconces. There were about 20 of them down the length of the building, and it was absolutely blinding. And we worked with them to tone it down. I'm just wondering if anybody noticed. And I know, Hunter, like businesses, they're always like, yeah, we want the brightest sign, we want the brightest, you guys having, you don't have to answer, sorry.
No,
You're
it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think obviously everybody wants visibility, but I don't think it, to the detriment of light pollution or the neighborhood or anything like that. I mean, I think also it's getting in trouble, so to speak, or being in the public eye for the wrong reasons isn't necessarily helpful as a business either. I think maybe the last thing you want as a new project is to be, living in, the comment section for why your project is problematic, right? I think you'd rather be either leasing it or renting it instead of talking about why your lights are so bright. So,
And Hunter, too, it's where that interface of the public right of way and the city stuff, and then where then BAR gets involved, and sometimes that's a little, you're in a business that's dealing with that. The city says I must. The city tells me this. I mean, that's going to be tremendously helpful, I think. How does one of the questions I was asked when I interviewed for this job is, how does historic preservation and economic development relate to one another? It's like, well, they're the same thing, essentially. So, all right. So that's really all I have. Otherwise, it just said it would be a short meeting. If you all have any questions about anything, what's going on in the city, when's it going to snow again? I don't know. It's I just will say I started that Monday when it snowed with a colonoscopy appointment at UVA. This was the 4th, and I'm like, oh my God. And they called me at 6 a.m. said, can you make it? I said, I will walk there. I will. Breck had to help my wife take out the car. But, and I just literally like, oh my God, all I can think about is just, can we just fast forward to 2023? It's, but I think things are stabilizing a little bit. I hope, although David's wearing a mask and so that's all. So Brett, I'll hand it to you, but thank you, Clayton. Hunter, I know we've met. Dude, we've met. Clayton, good to meet you and look forward to actually seeing, you know, and Robert Edwards is really tall in real life. That's what we were quite surprised when we met him in person. He's a much bigger person than the little guy. So, all right, Brett, it's all yours.
Well, I don't have anything else for this month unless there's any other further questions. James?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we started the meeting by tabling the consent agenda.
Oh,
yeah.
Waiting for
You
more
are.
members to join.
Thank you. Good call.
So
And
Well-
Robert,
now that we have Jody and I think Jody and
And Robert
Ron
Edwards. Yep.
and Robert, I think we've got enough. So I would like to move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Excellent. Thank you.
Robert Watkins,
Oh, sorry. I'll call a vote. Mr. Gastinger,
Aye.
Mr. Zemer,
Aye.
Mr. Bailey,
Yes.
Mr. Strange.
Yes.
We might ask you to abstain. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
yeah.
whatever you like.
Mr. Lehendra,
Aye.
Mr. Timmerman,
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
I was not present and will abstain.
Thank you. And Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Thank you.
quickly, I'd remind Brett, what you asked me about the BAR. In the ordinance, you all are an advisory body to council on all things sort of design related, preservation related. So as far as, you know, making observations on other parts of the comp plan, that's entirely within your purview. And the last thing, I'm sorry, I did want Robert to give you guys a quick summary of where things stand with the downtown mall project.
Yeah, so since last summer, we were awarded a cost share grant through the Virginia Department of Historic Resources, where they're contributing money towards a historic survey that we're doing of the downtown mall. This isn't of the buildings on either side of the mall, it's of the landscape elements that were installed by Lawrence Halpern in the 1970s and features that have been installed since. A team of architectural historians, I don't remember the consultant's name off the top of my head, but they're based in DC. And they're also going to be joined by Laura Knott, who's a local landscape architect and historian. I think they're going to kick off the historic survey maybe this week, but I'm not sure if their plans have changed with the snow. But they're going to photograph the lamp posts, the planters, the benches that remain, the bricks, and they're just going to create an inventory of it that'll go into the Department of Historic Resources records. They're also going to do some preliminary conditions assessments as well. And this is just going to be the document that's going to be completed, hopefully by May, will be the first step towards a more comprehensive plan for taking care of the mall moving forward. It's going to turn 50 years old in 2026. And working towards that, we just want to make sure that the city has a really good decision-making matrix for how to take care of the mall moving forward. So last month, we had a webinar that you can find through the Department of Historic Resources website. I can forward you a link. I also had an interview with NBC 29. It scared my pants off, but I did it. And there's some good publicity about this already. So yeah, we'll keep you updated as the project moves forward.
Yeah, that will be a really important topic of conversation, I'm sure, for all of us and this year and in the coming years. It's really some big long-term management decisions to be made with the mall.
And Robert, I would hope that they're also updating the building survey, since the last time the buildings were surveyed was some
That's,
time.
Yeah, that's Jody. That's some kind of some longer term survey planning that Jeff and I need to work on. That's not in the current scope, but we recognize that a lot of the historic surveys for the city are out of date, not only downtown, but also over by the university as well. So
Yeah,
so that's kind of on our radar of, yeah.
I mean, our the concerns, the sensibilities have changed in regard to what's historic and what isn't, and also time issues. Buildings now have fallen within the 50-year mark that weren't there when the survey was done. And also changes. I know of the buildings that have gotten rid of their modern facades or the additions and have recovered the historic facades below.
This is a huge piece of what we need to do. There are, I'd say maybe at least half of the properties that have been surveyed were done back in the late 70s and the early 80s. I mean, there's stuff that's gone. And this is where, again, you all, the BAR, you're our advisory body on the historic surveys, and we need to, you know, kind of get you more involved in that. But I have a limited amount of funds that, and that's where we had a grant to do a survey of the city's historic cemeteries, 4 cemeteries, but because of COVID, we just had to shut that down. We're looking at, for example, there's a corner, you know, where Tarleton Oak, that corner of North Downtown on the south side of High Street, that was never surveyed. Maybe that's something should be done. So Robert and I were talking today about evaluating Penn Park. And I don't know, Hunter and Clayton and David, if you followed with the unmarked graves that were, I don't know what the right word is, discovered, located, that we realized are at Penn Park. And some really exciting stuff that's been going on that you all aren't aware of. Our efforts to identify who those individuals were. It's been amazing knitting it together, and we've identified people who are descendants here in this community. One's a friend of mine. It's been really fascinating. But the idea of evaluating the park as the larger landscape of the Gilmer estate from, you know, the late 1800s. So how I allocate those resources, this is, you know, where I need your help, and I'll be bringing things to you on that. So yeah, Jody, it's one of the things that I have in there is to go back and look at all of these 1970, 1980 surveys and update them. It's in our 50-year plan.
So I would suggest that since there are only limited resources available, that we be very intentional about how we use those. And so we need to do an evaluation of all the surveys and all the existing documentation we have, and prioritize where we're going to use those funds when those funds become available.
And it's separate from the mall cultural landscape report. There was a specific $50,000 allocation a couple of years ago. So that's what we're using for the mall work. And I'm working with my boss to nudge that towards a long-term, not just preservation plan, but a maintenance plan of the mall. What are the things that are going to happen next? When do the lights need to switch? When do you have to put the bricks back? What's going on underneath the bricks? What's going on with the tree grates, et cetera, et cetera. So we're trying to get a lot done. We were able to use money with a grant to already, you know, stretch that $50,000 another $10,000. But as far as those reevaluating the surveys on the downtown or around town, yeah, Jody, we need to look at that and come up with some sort of I told Blake McDonald, some sort of a diet on how to approach it and how to do it best. But you're absolutely right. And we will talk about it,
Thank you.
even when you retire. When you're emeritus, BAR emeritus.
Oh, I can't wait to get that business card.
Excellent. Well, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Chair, I move to adjourn.
Second.
Oh, Amelie second.
So I'm guessing we're all approving that. We'll see you all in February, if not sooner, around town. Thank you.
Have a good night, guys.
All right.
Okay, good night. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
everybody.
Nice to meet you.